The bunker was so quiet that Claire could hear the ticking of an old wall clock. She looked from one familiar face to another. Rachel. Thomas. Sophia. One of them had been lying. Madame Celine's warning echoed in her mind. The one you fear is not your greatest enemy, the one you trust is. Sophia finally broke the silence. Claire, why are you looking at us like that? Claire slowly folded the note and slipped it into her pocket. I'm trying to figure out who knew we'd be here. Rachel frowned. What do you mean? Claire took a deep breath. The Dominion found my dad's house. They found the tunnel. And now they found the bunker. She looked around the room. Every place we've gone. They've arrived minutes later. Thomas crossed his arms. They've been tracking us. Claire shook her head. No. They've been following one of us. No one spoke. Then. Beep. Beep. A faint electronic sound echoed through the room. Everyone turned toward the source. The sound was coming from Rachel's coat. Rachel froze. Claire slowly stepped toward her. Rachel. What's making that sound? Rachel looked genuinely confused. I don't know. The beeping grew louder. Thomas reached into Rachel's coat pocket. He pulled out a tiny black device no larger than a coin. A blinking red light flashed across its surface. Sophia gasped. A tracker. Rachel's face turned white. I've never seen that before. Thomas examined it. It's military grade. It broadcasts our location every 30 seconds. Rachel burst into tears. I swear I didn't know. Claire wanted to believe her. Then she remembered something. The night you came to my father's house. You arrived just before the Dominion. Rachel slowly nodded. I know how that looks. Claire's voice was calm. Did you bring them to us? No. Rachel cried. I've spent 20 years hiding from them. Thomas looked closely at the tracker. His expression changed. Wait. He turned the device over. No. What? Claire asked. This wasn't put in Rachel's coat today. It's been here for months. Rachel stared at him. Months? Thomas nodded. They've been tracking you without you knowing. Rachel covered her mouth. Oh, God. Claire suddenly understood. They never lost you. They simply waited. Until you found me. Rachel collapsed into a chair, devastated. I'm so sorry. Claire knelt beside her. This wasn't your fault. Before Rachel could answer, the bunker lights flickered back on. Every computer monitor lit up at once. One by one. Security cameras appeared on the screens. Camera 1. The tunnel entrance. Camera 2. The forest. Camera 3. The bunker door. Claire's blood ran cold. More than 50 armed Dominion agents surrounded the entrance. At the front stood Victor Kane. Beside him was Evelyn. She wasn't handcuffed. She wasn't frightened. She stood confidently, holding a rifle. Victor smiled directly into one of the cameras. Almost as if he knew Claire was watching. Then he stepped aside. Evelyn walked closer to the camera. For several seconds. She simply stared. Then she quietly removed something from around her neck. A silver chain. Hanging from it was half of a heart-shaped locket. Claire instinctively reached beneath her shirt. Since childhood, she had worn an identical half-locket that her mother had given her. With trembling hands, she held it up. The two pieces were identical. Evelyn touched her half of the locket. For the first time, a tear rolled down her cheek. Very softly, so Victor couldn't hear, she whispered. Claire, don't come for me. Then, before anyone could react, Evelyn suddenly grabbed Victor's gun. Spun around. And fired. Bang. The camera feed went black. The bunker fell into stunned silence. No one knew who had been shot. The bunker fell into complete silence. Claire stared at the black security monitor. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. What just happened? Sophia whispered. No one answered. Thomas immediately rushed to the communications console, frantically pressing buttons. Come on, come on. The monitor flickered back to life. The image was shaky. Smoke filled the entrance to the tunnel. Dominion agents were running in every direction. Some were shouting orders. Others were dragging injured men to safety. Claire searched desperately for Evelyn. Then she saw her. She was on her knees. 2 agents had pinned her arms behind her back. Victor Kane slowly stepped into view. There was a tear in his suit jacket near his shoulder. Blood stained the fabric. Claire let out a breath. She hit him. Rachel nodded. She didn't miss. Victor looked furious. He grabbed Evelyn by the chin. Even without sound, Claire could see him yelling at her. Evelyn didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled. Victor slapped her across the face. Sophia gasped. Monster. Victor barked another order. An agent injected Evelyn with something in her neck. Within seconds, her body went limp. Claire slammed her fist onto the table. No. Rachel pulled her back. They've sedated her. They're taking her away. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I finally found my sister. And I can't even help her. Just then, Thomas noticed something unusual. Wait. He paused the video. Zoom in. Rachel enlarged the image. Victor had dropped something during the struggle. A black access card. One of the agents hurried to pick it up, but not before the camera captured it clearly. Thomas smiled for the first time that night. We've got it. Claire frowned. What? The clearance code. He enlarged the card until the printed information became readable. Hollow Ridge Research Facility. Level Omega access. Rachel's eyes widened. That's impossible. What is? Only the organization's highest-ranking officers carry Omega cards. Claire looked at the screen. So if we copy that code. Thomas nodded. We can get inside Hollow Ridge. Sophia smiled. For once, we're ahead of them. But Thomas's smile faded almost immediately. No. Claire looked at him. What? They wanted us to see this. Rachel's face turned pale. A trap. Thomas nodded. They know we'll try to rescue Evelyn. Claire stood up. I don't care. If it's a trap, I'll walk into it. Rachel sighed. I knew you'd say that. Thomas reached into another cabinet. He pulled out a large rolled-up blueprint. Carefully spreading it across the table, he revealed the layout of Hollow Ridge. Claire leaned closer. The facility was enormous. Underground laboratories. Security checkpoints. Medical wings. Holding cells. Escape tunnels. Then she noticed something strange. One room had been circled in red by her mother years ago. It wasn't the laboratory. It wasn't the prison cells. It was a small room beneath the facility labeled Phoenix Archive. Claire remembered her mother's video. Ask Madame Celine one question. Where is Project Phoenix? Rachel pointed at the blueprint. This is it. The Phoenix Archive. Thomas nodded grimly. Everything started there. Claire looked at the map. If we find the archive, we find the truth. Suddenly, a soft buzzing sound came from Claire's pocket. Her phone. She frowned. There hasn't been any signal for hours. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. There was no text. Only a live location. Inside Hollow Ridge. And beneath it, 4 chilling words. I'm still alive. Hurry. Claire's eyes widened. It. She looked at Rachel. It's from Evelyn. Before anyone could respond, the old radio crackled to life again. This time, it wasn't Evelyn. It was Madame Celine. Her voice was weak but urgent. Claire, listen carefully. Do not go to Hollow Ridge tomorrow. Claire frowned. What? Celine continued. If you leave tomorrow, you'll lose someone you love forever. The transmission ended. Claire looked around the bunker. The tarot reader had given her another warning. But this time, ignoring it could cost someone their life. Madame Celine's warning echoed through the bunker. Do not go to Hollow Ridge tomorrow. Or you'll lose someone you love forever. The radio fell silent. Claire stood frozen, staring at it. Sophia broke the silence. So, what do we do? Claire looked down at the message from Evelyn. I'm still alive. Hurry. It could be a trap, Rachel said quietly. Thomas nodded. Victor Kane knows you'll risk everything to save your sister. Claire clenched her fists. And if it isn't a trap? What if Evelyn really needs us? No one answered. Thomas spread the blueprint across the table again. There may be another way. He pointed to a narrow passage beneath the main building. This tunnel was built decades ago as an emergency escape route. Rachel leaned over the map. I've never seen this before. Because almost no one knows it exists, Thomas replied. It leads beneath the Phoenix Archive. Claire frowned. So we can get inside without going through the front gate? Thomas nodded. If the tunnel hasn't collapsed. Before anyone could speak, the bunker door shook violently. Boom. A deep crack appeared across the steel. They're using explosives now, Thomas said. We don't have much time. Claire picked up her mother's journal again. Several pages near the back had been glued together. She carefully separated them. A folded letter slipped onto the table. It wasn't addressed to Claire. It was addressed to Evelyn. Claire slowly opened it. Inside, her mother's handwriting covered both pages. My dearest Evelyn. If you're reading this, it means you've finally found your way back to your sister. Claire's voice trembled as she read aloud. None of what happened was your fault. If they convinced you that I abandoned you, they lied. I searched for you every single day. Rachel quietly wiped away a tear. Claire continued. They will try to turn you against Claire because together you are stronger than they can control. Sophia looked up. What does that mean? Thomas answered softly. They've always feared the two sisters finding each other. Claire reached the final paragraph. Suddenly, her expression changed. What is it? Rachel asked. Claire looked up. Mom wrote about someone inside the Dominion. Someone who's been secretly helping us. Rachel frowned. Who? Claire turned the letter around so everyone could read the last sentence. When the time comes, trust the raven who refuses to fly. Thomas whispered. The raven. Rachel's eyes widened. The silver raven pendant. Claire remembered the pendant worn by the fake nurse. Victor Kane's lapel pin. Even Evelyn had worn one. But what does refuses to fly mean? Before anyone could answer, the bunker's emergency phone rang. Everyone stared at it. Thomas slowly picked it up. He listened for only a few seconds before handing the receiver to Claire. It's for you. Claire cautiously took the phone. Hello? A familiar voice answered. I was wondering how long it would take. Claire's breath caught. Victor Kane. I assume you've watched your mother's video. Claire didn't respond. Victor chuckled. Good. Then you know Project Phoenix exists. What do you want? I'd like to make you an offer. Claire laughed bitterly. I'm not interested. You will be. Victor's tone became serious. I'll release Evelyn. Claire froze. In exchange, you bring me the journal. Rachel shook her head, mouthing no. Claire ignored her. How do I know you're telling the truth? You don't. But I'll prove she's alive. A moment later, another voice came onto the line. Weak. Shaking. Claire. It was Evelyn. I'm sorry. They're making me do this. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Evelyn, hold on. I'm coming. Suddenly, Evelyn shouted. Don't believe him. A loud struggle followed. Then the call cut off. Victor returned to the line. You have until sunrise. If you don't come, your sister dies. The line went dead. Silence filled the bunker. Claire slowly lowered the phone. She looked at the journal in her hands. Then at the blueprint. Then at the people who had risked everything to protect her. Finally, she made her decision. We're going to Hollow Ridge. Rachel sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. Thomas reached into a locked cabinet and removed 4 fake Dominion ID badges. If we're going in. He placed the badges on the table. We're going in as one of them. Just then, a deafening explosion ripped through the bunker. Boom. The steel door tore off its hinges and crashed onto the floor. Smoke poured into the room. Armed agents flooded the entrance. At their head stood Victor Kane. He smiled calmly. You were planning to come to me. He raised his pistol. So I decided to save you the trip. Smoke filled the bunker. Concrete dust rained from the ceiling as the heavy steel door crashed to the floor. Dominion agents stormed inside with rifles raised. Nobody move. Victor Kane stepped through the smoke, calmly adjusting his black gloves. His expensive suit was spotless except for the bandage wrapped around his right shoulder, where Evelyn had shot him. He smiled at Claire. We finally meet. Claire stood her ground, clutching the journal tightly. You've been chasing me my whole life. Victor chuckled. I've been protecting something much bigger than you. Rachel stepped in front of Claire. If you want her, you'll have to go through me. Victor sighed. Rachel. You've always been loyal. Rachel glared at him. I stopped being loyal the day I watched innocent children disappear. Victor nodded to one of his agents. Without warning. Bang. The agent fired. The bullet struck Rachel in the shoulder. She cried out and fell to the ground. Rachel. Claire screamed, rushing to her side. Blood quickly soaked out. Victor looked almost disappointed. I warned you not to make this difficult. Thomas quietly leaned toward Claire. Keep him talking. Claire understood immediately. While Victor focused on her, Thomas slowly moved toward the emergency power controls hidden behind a filing cabinet. Victor stretched out his hand. The journal. Claire shook her head. No. Victor smiled again. You still think that journal can destroy us? Claire looked him straight in the eyes. My mother believed it could. Victor's smile disappeared. Your mother underestimated us. Claire took a step forward. No. I think she understood you perfectly. Victor's face hardened. You sound just like her. Claire's voice was calm. Good. Because she died trying to stop you. For the first time. Victor lost his composure. He grabbed Claire by the arm. Your mother destroyed everything we spent decades building. Claire didn't look away. No. You destroyed it yourself. Victor raised his pistol. Give me the journal. Claire slowly opened it. Victor smiled. That's better. Then. Claire ripped several pages from the middle of the journal. Victor's eyes widened. What are you doing? She tore them into tiny pieces. One by one. The paper floated through the air like snow. Victor roared with anger. You fool. You've destroyed priceless information. Claire smiled. No. I destroyed your leverage. Victor lunged toward her. At that exact moment. Thomas slammed his hand onto the hidden emergency switch. Click. Every light in the bunker went out. Darkness. Then. Bright red emergency lights flashed on. A deafening alarm echoed through the bunker. Warning. Self-destruct sequence activated. Victor spun around. What? Thomas smiled for the first time. This bunker was never meant to fall into Dominion hands. Victor shouted at his agents. Find the control panel. A computerized voice echoed overhead. Evacuation required. 5 minutes until structural collapse. Panic spread through the agents. Some rushed toward the exit. Others searched frantically for the shutdown controls. In the confusion, Claire helped Rachel to her feet. Can you walk? Rachel nodded weakly. Barely. Sophia supported her from the other side. Thomas pointed toward a narrow passage hidden behind the shelves. Go. What about you? Claire asked. Thomas smiled sadly. Someone has to make sure this place goes down. Claire grabbed his hand. No. I'm not leaving you. Thomas reached into his pocket and pressed a small photograph into her hand. It was an old picture of Claire's mother. On the back she had written. Trust your heart more than your fear. Thomas gently closed Claire's fingers around it. Your mother saved my life. Today. I get to repay that debt. Before Claire could answer, Thomas slammed the hidden gate shut between them. Heavy steel bars dropped into place. Claire pounded on the gate. Thomas. He smiled through the bars. Go find Evelyn. And finish what your mother started. Claire felt tears stream down her face. I won't leave you. Thomas gave her one final nod. You already have. He pulled a red emergency lever. The passage behind Claire began to seal itself. Rachel grabbed Claire's hand. There's no time. Sophia pulled her toward the escape tunnel as the bunker shook violently. Just before the steel gate closed completely, Thomas shouted one final sentence. "Claire, the raven who refused to fly, is Evelyn." The gate slammed shut. Seconds later, a massive explosion ripped through the bunker. The force threw Claire, Sophia, and Rachel down the escape tunnel. When the dust finally settled, Claire looked back. The bunker was gone, buried beneath tons of rock. She closed her eyes, clutching her mother's photograph. Then she remembered Thomas's last words. Evelyn wasn't their enemy. She was their ally. Which meant everything Victor wanted Claire to believe was another lie. Claire slowly opened her eyes. Her ears rang from the explosion. Dust drifted through the narrow escape tunnel, making it difficult to breathe. Sophia coughed beside her while Rachel struggled to sit up, still clutching her wounded shoulder. For several seconds, no one spoke. Finally, Claire looked back toward the collapsed tunnel. The bunker was gone, buried beneath tons of rock. Tears filled her eyes. "Thomas." Rachel placed a gentle hand on Claire's shoulder. "He knew exactly what he was doing. He gave us a chance." Claire nodded silently. She wasn't going to let his sacrifice be in vain. An hour later, the three women emerged from the tunnel deep inside a dense forest. The sun was beginning to rise over the mountains. For the first time in days, Claire breathed fresh air. Sophia looked exhausted. "What now?" Claire reached into her pocket. She pulled out the tarot card Madame Celine had given her. On the back was the address of the spiritual fair. Rachel looked at it and frowned. She knew. "Knew what?" Claire asked. "That one day you'd survive this." Claire folded the card carefully. "We're going to find her." By noon, they arrived at the empty fairgrounds. Every booth had been packed away. The parking lot was almost deserted. Sophia looked around. "Are we too late?" Claire walked to the exact spot where Celine's tent had once stood. There was nothing there. Just an old wooden bench. She sighed. "She's gone." As the three turned to leave, an elderly groundskeeper called out. "Looking for the fortune teller?" Claire hurried over. "Yes." The old man smiled. "I figured someone would come." He reached into his pocket and handed Claire a small brass key. "She told me to give you this." Claire stared at the key. "When?" 3 weeks ago." Rachel's eyes widened. 3 weeks? The groundskeeper nodded. "She said a young woman named Claire would come looking for her." Claire felt chills run down her spine. "Did she say where she was going?" The old man pointed toward the mountains. "She left a message." He unfolded a piece of paper. In elegant handwriting were the words. "The cards have revealed everything they can. The rest must be discovered, not predicted." Below it was an address. A secluded cabin beside Blackwater Lake. Rachel's face changed instantly. "I know that place." Claire looked at her. "You've been there?" Rachel nodded. "Once. Your mother used to meet Celine there." Late that afternoon, they reached the cabin. It was small, weathered, and surrounded by towering pine trees. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Someone was inside. Claire slowly knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Madame Celine stood there. She looked exactly the same as the day Claire had met her. Not a single wrinkle had changed. She smiled gently. "I've been expecting you." Claire couldn't hide her frustration. "You knew all of this would happen." Celine nodded sadly. "I knew enough. You could have warned me." "I did. You didn't tell me my mother was murdered." Celine lowered her eyes. "If I had, the Dominion would have killed you before you ever reached the truth." Claire stepped inside the cabin. On every wall hung maps, old photographs, and dozens of tarot cards pinned beside newspaper clippings. One picture caught her attention. It showed a much younger Celine standing beside Claire's mother. "And Thomas." Claire frowned. "When was this taken?" Celine answered quietly. 30 years ago." Claire looked back at Celine's face. "You haven't aged." The room fell silent. Sophia and Rachel exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Celine closed the cabin door. Locked it. Then turned toward Claire. "There is something your mother begged me never to tell you." She paused. "But Thomas is gone now. So it's time." Claire's heartbeat quickened. What is it? Celine slowly removed the silver pendant from around her neck. It bore the same raven symbol worn by Dominion agents. Sophia instinctively stepped back. You work for them? Celine shook her head. No. I helped create them. Claire froze. What? Celine's eyes filled with regret. 35 years ago. I was one of the founding scientists of Project Phoenix. The room went deathly silent. Claire could barely speak. Then, you know everything. Celine nodded. Yes. And if we're going to save Evelyn? She walked to a locked cabinet and removed a thick file stamped top secret. You must finally learn what Project Phoenix really was. The cabin fell silent. Claire stared at the file in Madame Celine's hands. Across the front, in faded black letters, were the words. Project Phoenix Classified. Celine placed it gently on the table. For years, she said, I prayed this file would never have to be opened again. Claire slowly pulled out a chair. Then tell me everything. Celine took a deep breath. 35 years ago, a group of scientists, military officials, and billionaires secretly formed an organization. They believed the world was becoming unstable. They wanted to control the future. Sophia frowned. How? They believed that the easiest way to control the future. Celine paused. Was to control the people who would one day lead it. Claire frowned. So they kidnapped children? Celine nodded. They searched hospitals across the country for newborns who matched very specific genetic profiles. They didn't just choose healthy babies. They chose babies born into influential families, children they believed had exceptional intelligence, leadership potential, or rare inherited traits. Rachel lowered her head. I was one of those children. Celine nodded sadly. So was Evelyn. Claire's stomach tightened. They wanted to shape children into future politicians, scientists, judges, business leaders, people who could quietly influence the country from the inside. Sophia whispered. They wanted to build their own future. Exactly, Celine replied. Claire looked down at the file. So why was I left behind? Celine opened another folder. Inside were 2 hospital records. One had Claire's name. The other had Evelyn's. They came for both of you. Claire's hands trembled. But your mother escaped with you. Evelyn was taken before she could stop them. Claire closed her eyes. My mother spent her whole life trying to bring her back. She never gave up, Celine said softly. Not for one day. Rachel pointed to another document. What's this? Celine hesitated. Then she slid the paper across the table. It contained a list of names. Most had been crossed out. Only 3 remained. Claire Bennett. Evelyn Bennett. Sophia Carter. Sophia looked confused. My name? Celine nodded. They found your real identity years ago. Sophia felt her knees weaken. They've been watching me too? For most of your life. Claire reached for her sister's hand. We're in this together. Sophia nodded, fighting back tears. Then Claire noticed something else. At the bottom of the page was another name. One that had never been mentioned before. Subject 0. Claire looked up. Who is Subject 0? For the first time since they'd arrived, Celine looked afraid. She slowly closed the file. I hoped you wouldn't ask. Rachel frowned. What does it mean? Celine walked to the window. Outside, the wind rustled through the pine trees. Without turning around, she whispered. Before Project Phoenix ever targeted children, they tested it on one child. The very first subject. Claire's heartbeat quickened. What happened to that child? Celine turned back toward them. Her eyes were filled with guilt. He survived. Sophia asked quietly. Where is he now? Celine's voice barely rose above a whisper. He's the one running the Dominion. The room fell silent. Claire's eyes widened. Victor Kane? Celine slowly shook her head. No. Victor only works for him. Claire felt a chill run down her spine. Then who is Subject 0? Before Celine could answer, a loud engine roared outside. Rachel rushed to the window. A black helicopter was descending toward the clearing beside the cabin. Armed agents jumped out before it had even landed. They found us. Rachel shouted. Celine didn't panic. She calmly walked to the fireplace and pressed a hidden stone. A section of the bookshelf swung open, revealing another concealed passage. She looked at Claire. Take the file. Claire grabbed the Project Phoenix file. What about you? Celine smiled sadly. I've spent 35 years running. My journey ends here. Claire shook her head. No. You're coming with us. Celine gently placed a hand on Claire's cheek. Your mother once made me the same promise. And today, I'm asking you to keep yours. The cabin window suddenly shattered. Crash. Agents poured inside. Victor Kane stepped through the broken doorway, brushing glass from his coat. He smiled at Celine. After all these years, we meet again. Celine stepped in front of Claire. Her voice was calm. Run. Claire hesitated for only a second. Then she grabbed Sophia's hand. Rachel followed close behind as they disappeared into the hidden passage. Just before the secret door closed, Claire heard Victor say something that stopped her cold. Bring Subject 0 to me. Claire froze. Victor hadn't asked for the Project Phoenix file. He hadn't asked for the journal. He wanted Subject 0. Claire ran through the narrow passage, clutching the Project Phoenix file against her chest. Behind her, gunshots echoed through the cabin. Bang! Bang! Sophia flinched. They're shooting. Rachel grabbed Claire's arm. Keep moving. Tears blurred Claire's vision. We can't just leave Celine. Rachel's voice cracked. She made her choice. The hidden tunnel sloped downward, eventually opening into an abandoned mining shaft beneath the mountain. Old wooden beams creaked overhead. Rusted mining carts sat abandoned on broken tracks. Thomas had been right. There was always another escape route. After nearly 20 minutes of walking, they finally stopped inside a small cave. Everyone was exhausted. Claire leaned against the wall and opened the Project Phoenix file. A thick envelope slid onto the ground. Across the front, someone had written. For Claire, read only after you learn about Subject 0. Claire carefully opened it. Inside was a photograph. She expected to see Victor Kane. Instead, it showed a little boy, no older than 8. He was standing alone in a white laboratory, staring directly into the camera. Written beneath the picture were the words. Subject 0. Real name, Elias Mercer. Claire frowned. Mercer. She looked at Rachel. That's Celine's last name. Rachel's face turned pale. Oh, no. Claire looked back at the photograph. Is he? Rachel nodded slowly. Celine's son. Sophia gasped. What? Rachel closed her eyes. Before Celine realized what Project Phoenix truly was, she had a young son. They told her he was being enrolled in a gifted education program. Claire's heart sank. But they lied. Rachel nodded. They turned him into their first experiment. Claire looked at the picture again. The little boy's eyes looked empty. Almost emotionless. A page tucked behind the photograph caught her attention. She unfolded it. It was a letter written by Celine. Claire, if you're reading this, then you've discovered the truth I spent 30 years hiding. Subject 0 isn't just my son. He's the reason I betrayed the Dominion. Claire swallowed hard. The letter continued. They took my child and turned him into someone I could no longer recognize. When I tried to rescue him, he looked at me and said he had no mother. Rachel wiped away a tear. They erased his memories. Claire kept reading. Years later, he disappeared from every Dominion record. No one knows where he is. Sophia looked confused. Then why is Victor looking for him? Rachel answered quietly. Because if Subject 0 is still alive, he's the only person who knows every Dominion secret. Suddenly, Claire noticed another photograph hidden inside the envelope. It was recent. No more than a year old. A man stood beside Victor Kane at a formal dinner. His face was partly turned away. But something caught Claire's attention. Around his neck hung a silver raven pendant. The same symbol. She turned the photograph over. Written on the back were 5 chilling words. He hides in plain sight. Claire frowned. What does that mean? Before anyone could answer, Sophia's phone vibrated. Everyone froze. There shouldn't be any signal here, Rachel whispered. Sophia slowly looked at the screen. It's a video call. No caller ID. Claire hesitated. Answer it. Sophia tapped the screen. The picture appeared. It wasn't Victor. It wasn't Evelyn. It was Madame Celine. She looked bruised, exhausted, and frightened. Behind her was a dimly lit room with concrete walls. Celine! Claire cried. Celine smiled weakly. I don't have much time. They captured you? Rachel asked. Celine nodded. Yes. But that's not why I called. She looked directly at Claire. Listen carefully. The man you're searching for has been closer to you than you realize. Claire's heart pounded. What do you mean? Celine took a shaky breath. Claire. Subject 0. Is hiding under a different name. The video suddenly glitched. Static filled the screen. For one brief second, another face appeared behind Celine. Claire's eyes widened. She recognized him immediately. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone she had trusted. Someone who had been helping her from the very beginning. The call disconnected before she could speak. Claire stared at the black screen. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. No. That's impossible. Claire couldn't take her eyes off the black phone screen. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear herself think. The face she'd seen behind Madame Celine. It couldn't be. It has to be a mistake, she whispered. Rachel looked at her anxiously. Claire, who did you see? Claire slowly lowered the phone. I saw. She struggled to say the name. Daniel. Sophia's eyes widened. The reporter? Claire nodded. The same Daniel Victor claimed he captured. Rachel frowned. But we all saw him. Claire shook her head. No, we saw what Victor wanted us to see. The room fell silent. Claire replayed every memory she had of Daniel. He had always appeared at the right time. He always knew where she was working. He was the one who encouraged her to investigate powerful people. He had access to confidential records no ordinary reporter should have seen. And somehow, he always survived. Rachel's expression changed. Oh, my God. Claire looked at her. What? Remember when Victor threatened Daniel? Claire nodded. Rachel continued. They never actually hurt him. Claire's stomach tightened. They hit him. Rachel slowly shook her head. No. They wanted you to believe he was a victim. Sophia gasped. You think he was pretending? Claire closed her eyes. She remembered something she'd ignored at the time. When Daniel had been dragged onto the screen. His wrists hadn't been bleeding. The ropes around his hands had been loose. He could have escaped. But he hadn't. He wanted me to trust him, Claire whispered. Rachel carefully examined the Project Phoenix file again. Several pages near the back were still sealed. She opened them. Inside was a personnel list. Hundreds of names. Scientists. Doctors. Security officers. Then, one photograph caught Claire's attention. It showed a young man wearing a white lab coat. He looked about 25. His name read Elias Mercer. Claire compared the picture to Daniel. The hairstyle was different. The beard was gone. The glasses were missing. But the eyes. They were exactly the same. Sophia covered her mouth. It's him. Rachel's hands began shaking. Daniel. Is subject 0. Claire couldn't believe it. No. He worked beside me for 6 years. Rachel nodded. Which gave him the perfect opportunity to watch you. Claire remembered every conversation they'd ever had. Every investigation. Every coincidence. None of it had been an accident. Suddenly, a slow clap echoed through the cave. Clap. 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 The 3 women spun around. Standing at the cave entrance was Daniel. He wasn't tied up. He wasn't injured. He wore a black jacket instead of his usual reporter's clothes. For several seconds, no one spoke. Finally, Daniel smiled sadly. I was hoping Celine wouldn't tell you. Claire stepped backward. So it's true. Daniel lowered his head. My real name is Elias Mercer. Rachel stared at him. Subject 0. He nodded. I've carried that name my entire life. Claire's voice trembled with anger. You lied to me. Every single day. I know. You used me. I protected you. Claire laughed bitterly. Protected me? Daniel took one step closer. If I hadn't stayed close, Victor would have found you years ago. Claire didn't know what to believe anymore. Why should I trust anything you say? Daniel reached into his pocket. Slowly, he placed a small silver key on the ground between them. Claire recognized it instantly. It matched the strange lock inside the Project Phoenix file. I stole this from Victor, Daniel said. It's the only key to the Phoenix archive. Rachel looked stunned. You betrayed the Dominion. Daniel nodded. I betrayed them the day I learned what they did to my mother. Claire frowned. Celine. Daniel smiled sadly. I remembered her. Not all at once. But little by little. They erased my memories. But they couldn't erase a mother's voice. Tears filled his eyes. I've been pretending to serve Victor, while secretly destroying everything he built. Claire's anger began to fade. Then why didn't you tell me the truth? Daniel looked at her with regret. Because if Victor suspected you knew who I really was, he would have killed you. Before Claire could respond, a loud explosion echoed somewhere outside the cave. The ground trembled violently. Daniel's expression changed instantly. They found us. Claire looked toward the cave entrance. In the distance, black helicopters were flying low over the forest. Searchlights swept across the trees. Daniel looked at Claire. His voice was urgent. We're out of time. Victor is taking Evelyn to the Phoenix archive. He plans to erase her memories. Before sunrise. Claire tightened her grip on the silver key. Then she looked Daniel straight in the eyes. Take us to Hollow Ridge. Daniel nodded once. This time, we end it. The helicopter blades thundered overhead. Searchlights swept across the forest, cutting through the darkness like giant white swords. Daniel looked toward the sky. We have less than 30 minutes. Claire tightened her grip on the silver key. Then let's move. An hour later, the five of them stood on a rocky cliff overlooking Hollow Ridge Research Facility. Claire's breath caught. The place was far larger than she'd imagined. Tall steel fences surrounded dozens of concrete buildings. Watchtowers stood at every corner. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter while military vehicles moved through the compound. Hidden beneath the mountain was the place that had stolen her sister and destroyed countless lives. Sophia whispered. It looks like a fortress. Daniel nodded. It was built to be impossible to escape. Rachel looked at him. You've been here before. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said. I grew up here. Claire glanced at him. You remember it now? He nodded. Every hallway. Every laboratory. Every scream. Silence fell over the group. Daniel unfolded the blueprint Thomas had given them. He pointed to a narrow service tunnel. The main entrance is heavily guarded. But this tunnel leads directly beneath the Phoenix archive. Claire looked at the map. And the silver key? Daniel held it up. It opens the archive. But only once. Rachel frowned. What happens after that? The entire facility goes into lockdown. Claire took a deep breath. So once we're inside, there's no easy way out. Daniel met her eyes. No. There isn't. The group crawled through the old service tunnel for nearly 20 minutes before reaching a rusted metal hatch. Daniel listened carefully. No footsteps. He slowly pushed the hatch open. One by one, they climbed into a dimly lit maintenance corridor. The air smelled of disinfectant and machine oil. Claire's heart raced. She was finally inside Hollow Ridge. The place that had haunted her family for nearly 3 decades. As they moved quietly through the corridor, Claire noticed framed photographs hanging on the walls. Each showed successful politicians, judges, military officers, and business leaders. Beneath every picture was the same sentence. A better future begins today. Claire felt sick. They're proud of this. Daniel nodded. Most people working here believe they're saving the world. Rachel whispered. They've been lying to themselves for years. Suddenly, footsteps echoed around the corner. Daniel quickly motioned for everyone to hide. 2 Dominion guards walked past. One of them laughed. I heard Director Kane finally caught the Bennett girl. The other smiled. Good. Tonight, Project Phoenix begins again. Claire's stomach tightened. She waited until the guards disappeared before whispering. What did he mean by that? Daniel's expression darkened. It means Victor isn't interested in killing you. Claire frowned. What does he want? Daniel hesitated. He wants to replace Evelyn. With you. Claire froze. What? Rachel looked horrified. No. Daniel nodded. Victor believes you're stronger. He wants to erase your memories. And make you the next leader of the Dominion. Sophia grabbed Claire's hand. We're getting Evelyn out. And we're leaving. Claire nodded firmly. No matter what. They finally reached a massive steel door. Above it, in glowing red letters, were the words. Phoenix Archive. Daniel inserted the silver key. The lock clicked. Slowly. The heavy door swung open. Inside was a circular room lined with thousands of files and computer servers. In the center stood a single glass chamber. Claire walked closer. Inside the chamber sat a frightened young woman with curly dark hair. She looked up. Their eyes met. Claire felt the world stop. It was Evelyn. She slowly stood. Tears filled her eyes. For the first time, she smiled. Claire. Before Claire could run to her, a slow clap echoed through the archive. Victor Kane stepped out from the shadows. Behind him stood more than 20 armed Dominion agents. Victor smiled. I knew you'd come. Claire's heart sank. Daniel whispered. It was a trap. Victor looked directly at Daniel. Oh, Elias. I've known you were betraying me. Since the very beginning. The Phoenix Archive fell deathly silent. Claire's eyes remained fixed on Evelyn, who stood inside the glass chamber. She was alive. After 28 years. She was finally standing only a few feet away. Claire. Evelyn whispered. Claire instinctively stepped toward her. But before she could reach the chamber. Click. More than 20 Dominion agents raised their rifles. Victor Kane smiled. I wouldn't take another step. Claire stopped. Her hands clenched into fists. You promised not to hurt her. Victor laughed softly. I made no such promise. Daniel stepped in front of Claire. If anyone dies tonight, it won't be her. Victor looked almost amused. Elias. I gave you everything. A home. An education. A purpose. Daniel shook his head. You gave me a prison. Victor sighed. I was hoping you'd understand one day. I understand now. Daniel's voice was steady. You stole my childhood. You murdered innocent people. And tonight, it ends. Victor nodded toward the guards. Arrest him. 4 agents rushed forward. Before they reached him, Daniel slammed his hand against a red emergency button hidden beneath a nearby console. A loud alarm filled the archive. Warning. Phoenix Archive security override activated. Every electronic lock in the room clicked open. The glass chamber surrounding Evelyn slowly slid upward. Victor's smile vanished. No. Claire ran. So did Evelyn. For the first time in their lives, the twin sisters stood face to face. Neither of them spoke. They simply stared at one another. Claire slowly reached out her trembling hand. Evelyn did the same. When their hands touched, both women burst into tears. Claire pulled Evelyn into a tight embrace. I found you. Evelyn sobbed into her shoulder. I thought you weren't real. I thought they made you up. Claire held her even tighter. I'm here. And I'm never leaving you again. Rachel wiped away tears. Even Sophia couldn't stop crying. For one beautiful moment. Nothing else mattered. Then, Victor Kane pulled a pistol from beneath his jacket. He aimed directly at Claire. You've ruined everything. Bang. The gunshot echoed through the archive. Claire instinctively closed her eyes. She waited for the pain. It never came. Instead, someone collapsed beside her. Daniel. Blood spread across his shirt as he fell to one knee. Rachel screamed. Elias. Claire caught him before he hit the floor. No. Daniel looked up at her and smiled weakly. I guess. I finally chose the right side. Claire pressed her hands against the wound. Stay with me. Victor calmly raised his gun again. This is your last chance. Give me the Project Phoenix file. Claire slowly stood. Her eyes burned with anger. She looked at the file in her hands. Then, without hesitation, she threw it into the center of the room. Victor smiled. I knew you'd make the sensible choice. But Claire wasn't smiling. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small lighter, and flicked it open. Rachel's eyes widened. Claire. Claire tossed the lighter onto the stack of papers. Whoosh. Flames erupted instantly. The Project Phoenix file caught fire. Within seconds, decades of classified documents were engulfed in flames. Victor's face twisted with rage. No. He lunged toward the burning file. At that exact moment, every monitor inside the archive suddenly switched on. A pre-recorded video began playing on every screen. Claire gasped. It was her mother. She looked directly into the camera and smiled. If you're seeing this, then Claire made the choice I always hoped she would. Victor froze. His expression changed from anger to fear. Claire stared at the screen. Her mother continued. Victor, if you're watching this, then you've already lost. The entire archive fell silent. Victor whispered. What have you done? Claire smiled for the first time since this nightmare began. No, Victor. My mother did. The lights suddenly flickered. A computerized voice echoed throughout Hollow Ridge. Warning. All Project Phoenix files have been automatically transmitted to federal authorities. Upload, 100% complete. Victor's eyes widened in horror. It can't be. Claire finally understood. The paper file had been a decoy. The real evidence had been hidden in the USB drive all along. And by opening the archive, they had unknowingly triggered her mother's final plan. Outside, sirens echoed across the mountains. Dozens of vehicles raced toward Hollow Ridge. Victor looked toward the windows. For the first time in his life, he realized he had run out of time. The shrill alarm echoed throughout Hollow Ridge. Warning. Federal transmission complete. All Project Phoenix files successfully delivered. Victor Kane stood frozen. For the first time, fear replaced the confidence in his eyes. No, he whispered. This isn't possible. Claire looked at the burning pile of papers. My mother planned this years ago. Victor turned toward her, his face filled with rage. You have no idea what you've done. Claire stood between Victor and Evelyn. I know exactly what I've done. I ended your secret. Outside, the sound of helicopters filled the sky. Then came another sound. Police sirens. Dozens of them. Rachel looked through the reinforced glass windows. They're here. Black SUVs surrounded the facility. Behind them came armored FBI vehicles. Federal agents poured into the compound. The Dominion guards outside began dropping their weapons. Some tried to escape into the forest. Others surrendered immediately. Victor looked around the archive. His empire was collapsing. Suddenly, Victor raised his pistol again. If I lose everything, then none of you are leaving. He fired. Bang. Claire barely had time to react. Evelyn shoved her aside. The bullet struck Evelyn in the upper arm. She cried out and fell to the floor. Evelyn. Claire rushed to her. Blood stained Evelyn's sleeve. I'm okay. Evelyn whispered through clenched teeth. It's just my arm. Victor laughed. You still choose her. After everything. Evelyn slowly stood despite the pain. I remember now. Victor frowned. What? I remember my mother. The room became silent. Victor's confident smile disappeared. I remember. She used to sing to us. Claire looked at Evelyn in disbelief. You remember? Evelyn nodded, tears filling her eyes. I remembered after I saw you. The memories kept coming back. Victor shouted. She's lying. No, Evelyn replied. I finally know who I am. Daniel struggled to his feet, holding his wounded side. He looked at the main control panel. Claire. If we don't shut down the servers, the Dominion can rebuild. Claire followed his gaze. Rows of powerful computer servers lined the archive. They contained decades of stolen identities, secret financial records, surveillance files, and classified research. Rachel understood immediately. We have to destroy them. Victor stepped in front of the servers. You touch these machines, and you'll erase the identities of thousands of innocent people. Daniel shook his head. No. We'll erase your control over them. Claire looked around. Near the wall was a large emergency fire axe. She grabbed it. Victor lunged toward her. But Sophia tackled him from behind. Go. Claire swung the axe with all her strength. Crash. The first server exploded into sparks. She swung again. Crash. Another rack collapsed. Daniel joined her. Rachel followed. One by one, the servers were destroyed. Smoke filled the archive. A computerized voice echoed overhead. Critical system failure. Data storage destroyed. Victor fell to his knees. 30 years of secrets. Gone forever. Suddenly, the massive steel doors burst open. Armed federal agents rushed inside. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Drop your weapons. Dominion agents immediately surrendered. Victor looked around. There was nowhere left to run. An FBI agent aimed his weapon. Victor Kane. You're under arrest. Victor slowly smiled. You think this is over? The lead agent frowned. It is. Victor looked at Claire. No. There are people above me. They'll never let this die. Claire stepped closer. Maybe. But today, the world finally knows your name. The agent placed Victor in handcuffs. As he was led away, Victor looked back one last time. You won this battle. But not the war. Claire watched him disappear through the doorway. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight she'd carried for years begin to lift. She turned toward Evelyn. The sisters embraced tightly. Neither of them said a word. They didn't have to. They had finally found each other. But as emergency crews escorted everyone out of the archive, Claire noticed something strange. Madame Celine was nowhere to be found. Rachel looked around in confusion. She should have been here. Claire frowned. What if she escaped? Rachel slowly shook her head. No. I have a feeling. She wanted to disappear. Claire reached into her coat pocket. Inside was a folded tarot card. She hadn't put it there. On the back, written in elegant handwriting, was one final message. Every ending is the beginning of another story. Claire looked toward the mountains. Somehow, she knew Madame Celine was still out there. Watching. Waiting. 6 months had passed since the fall of Hollow Ridge. The mountains were quiet again. The underground facility had been sealed by federal investigators, and the name the Dominion dominated headlines across the country. Claire sat in her apartment, staring at a newspaper on her desk. The front page headline read, Secret Organization Exposed After Decades of Crimes. Beneath it was her byline. By Claire Bennett. She had finally finished the biggest investigation of her career. Not for fame. Not for awards. But to keep the promise she'd unknowingly made to her mother. Across town, Evelyn was slowly rebuilding her life. The years spent inside the Dominion had left invisible scars. Simple things still frightened her. Crowded places. Loud alarms. People standing behind her. Some nights she woke from nightmares, believing she was still inside Hollow Ridge. Claire never left her alone on those nights. She would sit beside her sister until the sun came up. Healing wasn't quick. But every day, it became a little easier. Sophia had finally received answers about her own past. Federal investigators located distant relatives connected to her biological family. Although her parents had died years earlier, she discovered cousins, an aunt, and a grandfather who had spent decades searching for her. Still, when people asked who her family was, she always smiled and answered, I have 2 sisters. Claire. And Evelyn. Rachel recovered from her gunshot wound. Instead of disappearing, she chose to testify against everyone involved in Project Phoenix. Her testimony helped investigators rescue several surviving victims and uncover hidden Dominion facilities across the country. She no longer lived in fear. For the first time in decades, she was free. One afternoon, Claire received a phone call from the FBI. The agent sounded excited. Miss Bennett. We've identified every senior Dominion leader. Except one. Claire already knew the answer. Victor Kane? We have him. Then who? There was a long pause. We still can't find Madame Celine. Claire looked out the window. I don't think you ever will. A week later, Claire drove alone to the old fairgrounds where this journey had begun. The place was empty. The festival had ended months ago. Only one weathered wooden bench remained. She sat down quietly. Everything had started here. With a tarot reading she had laughed at. A soft breeze rustled the trees. Then something slid across the bench beside her. Claire frowned. It was a brand new deck of tarot cards wrapped in dark green ribbon. There was no one nearby. She looked around. The parking lot was empty. Tucked beneath the ribbon was a handwritten note. Claire unfolded it. It read, The future is never written in the cards. The cards simply remind us that every choice has a consequence. There was no signature. Only a small drawing of a raven. Claire smiled. Thank you, Celine. She looked toward the horizon. For just a moment, She thought she saw an elderly woman in a dark green shawl walking between the trees. Claire blinked. The figure was gone. Perhaps it had only been her imagination. Or perhaps some mysteries were never meant to be solved. Claire picked up the tarot deck, smiled to herself, and walked toward her car. She no longer feared the future. Because she finally understood the lesson hidden inside every prediction. The future isn't something you're given. It's something you choose. 1 year later. The world had changed. The headlines about Project Phoenix and the Dominion had slowly faded, but the lives they had shattered were still being rebuilt. Claire Bennett stood in front of a simple white house overlooking a peaceful lake outside Seattle. The morning sun reflected across the water as birds sang in the distance. It was quiet. The kind of quiet she had once believed she'd never experience again. A car pulled into the driveway. Claire smiled. Evelyn stepped out first. The scar above her eyebrow remained, but the fear that had once lived in her eyes was finally disappearing. She wasn't completely healed. Some wounds took longer than others. But for the first time in nearly 3 decades, she was living life on her own terms. Sophia climbed out of the passenger seat carrying a homemade apple pie. You know, she laughed, I still can't bake without burning something. Claire laughed. You've definitely improved. The 3 sisters embraced. No secrets. No lies. Just family. Later that afternoon, they drove together to a quiet cemetery on a hillside overlooking the city. 3 white lilies rested in Claire's hands. They stopped in front of a polished granite headstone. Emily Bennett. Beloved mother. Forever in our hearts. Claire gently placed the flowers at the base of the grave. Evelyn knelt beside her. For several minutes, no one spoke. Finally, Evelyn whispered. I'm sorry it took me so long to come home. A gentle breeze swept across the hill. Claire smiled through her tears. I think she already forgave you. Sophia slipped her hands into theirs. I think she's proud of all of us. The sisters stood together in silence, feeling closer to their mother than ever before. A few weeks later, Claire published a book about everything that had happened. She didn't write it for money. She wrote it for the families who never stopped searching for their children. For the survivors who believed their voices would never be heard. And for one brave woman who sacrificed everything so the truth could finally be told. The book became a national bestseller. Thousands of people came forward with information that helped investigators rescue more victims and close the final Dominion safe houses. Justice had taken decades. But it had finally arrived. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Claire returned to the old fairgrounds one last time. The place was empty. Just as it had been before. She sat on the same weathered wooden bench where everything had begun. In her hand was the deck of tarot cards Madame Celine had left behind. Claire smiled. I don't know where you are. But thank you. As she stood to leave, a familiar voice drifted through the wind. You never really believed the cards. Claire turned around. No one was there. She smiled. No. She whispered. I believed in the choices. The wind gently flipped over the top tarot card in the deck. It was the star. A symbol of hope, healing, and new beginnings. Claire looked toward the horizon, then quietly walked away with her sisters. Their future was no longer written by fear. It was written by the choices they made together. What would you have done if you were Claire? Would you have ignored the tarot reading, or would you have followed every clue? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next thrilling story. Share this video with your friends and family, and remember, sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't found in the cards, but in the choices we make. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.